Welcome. I just want to do a short video here covering a number of concepts that are related to one idea, and that idea is the idea of symbols. We're within private-person.com website. We're looking at training and information ideas that relate to how to live a private life, how to stay in the common law world where you have privacy rights and property rights, and through proper living processes and understanding how the system works, maintaining your privacy and property rights and learning how to defend them from governments and agencies and corporations that seek to infringe or at least invite you to voluntarily waive your rights so that they can do what they want to do or have what they want to have. So within this idea of private rights, it's important to learn about a number of things, and today we're going to talk about symbols. Really, symbols are the basis for all forms of communication. Knowledge and information is passed along through all different types of symbols. And one of the basic symbols when you're talking about law is flags and coats of arms. A flag, if you go back, in the centuries, was a representative of the power and the legal entity that was in force at that particular time, whether it's flying on top of a castle or being carried into battle on the flagpole. It is a symbol of the authority and the identity of who it is behind that particular flag. So you knew whose side was whose and who was coming at you and all that sort of good stuff. Now, a derivative of the flags or related to the flags is the coat of arms, which was a personal type of identifier for families. And there is the House of Windsor is what the house is called for the ruling party in Queen of England is the House of Windsor, and they have a specific coat of arms, and each one of the individuals also have their own private coat of arms as well. So coat of arms is a big part of how the system operates, and the flags as well. There are specific criteria for every aspect of the flags. There are regulations to define what the color is, what the size is, what the shape is, what the style is, and vexillology is the name of the specialists or specialty area that study what all these things mean. And for those who know what the symbols mean, they can look at a particular a group of what looks like one thing to us and break it down into the individual elements, and each one of those elements is telling a story. It's there for a reason and a purpose, and it indicates something. The color, the shape, whether it's this animal or that animal, etc., they all mean something, but it only means something to somebody who knows what the language of those symbols are. So every element has meaning in a coat of arms. Every element has a meaning in a flag. The colors have a meaning, and it's important, if you want to understand what's going on around you, to learn the language of what is being used to communicate with you every day. These flags you see everywhere, but you don't necessarily know what they mean, other than a simplistic idea that it represents a particular country and so on. The coat of arms, we see it semi-regularly, and we don't really understand what those mean either, and it's very valuable to understand a little bit more about those things and how they work. One aspect of flags, which there's been lots of discussion and arguments about with regards to is it really true, does it really mean anything, is the idea of a fringe on the flags. There very often is a gold fringe around a flag, and in some cases a silver fringe. If you look at the coat of arms of Canada, there is another post with a video on it dealing with the coat of arms of Canada, where the flags within the coat of arms, there are two. One is a British flag and one is a French flag. Both had fringes on them in the coat of arms. The British flag had a gold fringe and the French flag had a silver fringe. And late 90s, those fringe flags were changed to non-fringe flags on all coat of arms throughout all aspects of the Government of Canada and the use of that particular coat of arms. I believe it's a fairly major symbolic change of some aspect of legal process, which is advertising to everybody who understands the language of coat of arms and the symbols with regards to flags. It's advertising to those people who know what it means that something has changed, and only those who know what it means know what that change was indicated by. Another aspect of the flags and the use of flags is the flagpole. There's a number of researchers out there who have indicated various things with regards to the style of flagpole that is used, and the fact that something on top of the flagpole indicates something different, like a gold ball is symbolic of a symbol of war, a cannonball, the gold eagle in the United States, the president's office, and various other things. So those are symbolic of various things, and sometimes they're symbolic that it would be good to know what the symbolism means, because it may be advertising something that is not beneficial to you and it's beneficial to some other party. One indication of that, which I wanted to show you here, is that this here is the Canadian flag. This is off of the Canadian flag regulation site, and it's showing the specific dimensions of the Canadian flag that is considered a legal Canadian flag. Anything that does not have a 1:2 dimension is not a legal flag. Anything that does not have this particular dimension of red rectangular box on each end is not a legal Canadian flag. The same thing with this maple leaf. This is an artificial maple leaf. It is a copyrighted stylized maple leaf, and it has a specific shape, and also the colors are specific. So every aspect of this flag is defined to ensure that every flag that is created that is supposed to be lawful, that is supposed to have some legal authority behind it, matches the legal flag. If you're trying to do something and you're flying the wrong shape of flag, you're not actually invoking the law that that flag represents, because it's now a different symbol. You've changed the symbol to something else. And very often you'll see a Canadian flag that is more square than this, with narrower bands, and sometimes a slightly different design of the maple leaf in the middle. And again, if those are flown in official circumstances, it's advertising the fact that A, somebody doesn't know what they're doing, or B, it's not a lawful Canadian circumstance, it is something else. There is no indication within the regulations for the Canadian flag for any allowance of a fringe to be put on the flag. And if you do some research into Canada in that, there's questions that people have raised about it, and the official answer is that there is no regulation saying they can't put a fringe on it, and it carries whatever meaning the viewer wants to put on it, which is an interesting way of saying that we have our meaning, you pick whatever meaning you want, and you know, we'll go from there. And bottom line is, anytime you change the flag, you change the legal meaning, so something to be aware of. With regards to this particular photograph here, you can see that this here is a flagpole, obviously, and the pole is you know, a vertical flagpole that has a horizontal crossbar, and then the horizontal crossbar has these wires coming off it, which additional flags are flown off of. And you'll see this in front of maritime museums and in front of yacht clubs and so on, because this is symbolic. This style of flagpole is symbolic of a mast on a ship, and this is the way that flags are flown on the mast of a ship. Now, when you see this, that's really the association, is it's advertising some sort of admiralty presentation because of the flagpole that is being used. And if you zoom out here on this photograph is actually a building on shore, and it happens to be in Richmond, British Columbia, and it is a school district building. So this is the Richmond School District, which is flying a maritime mast flagpole out front for some reason. And it's also got the gold cannonball on top of it, which again may carry meaning, and it's quite interesting. So you'll also see this at border crossings, at the U.S. border crossing. If you go down there, this is the flagpole that's out in front of the U.S. border crossing, is this type of what I consider to be an admiralty flagpole. There, Stanley Park is just adjacent to the Lionsgate Bridge, which is over the entrance to the Port of Vancouver. And up until just a few years ago, there was just a plain flagpole that was flying on the edge of Stanley Park, overlooking the entrance to the port. And now, about a year and a half ago, they put a Admiralty style flagpole in place, advertising, what is my interpretation, advertising that this is some type of Admiralty jurisdiction that they're coming into instead of a common law jurisdiction. That's one interpretation for it. So this here is a certificate which was issued by the Canadian government for the proclamation of the flag, creating the flag as the official flag of Canada. And it's not a high resolution image, so it does pixelate a little bit. But if you zoom in here, and this is a coat of arms for Canada, and if you look closely, you'll see that there actually is a border around the British flag and a border around the French flag, and those are fringes. And when you see more highly detailed images, you'll see that they are gold and silver and quite obvious. And in mid-90s, the fringe flags were removed. All of the elements were changed. There's a different shape of crown. This here was changed. These poles which are supporting the flags now go down to below the banner. The animals have changed. Everything has changed. Now the excuse they used was that they put a circular banner with words on it behind the shield. But they didn't just do that. They changed everything else. So something went on that was interesting there. I found a couple interesting things about this particular piece. Is that this is allegedly coming from Elizabeth II, so the Queen of Canada, right? And this is the formal style of law making when it comes from the Queen, where they have all this fancy language and so on. You'll notice here in the top, again, pixelating, it's a little hard to see, but you notice, oops, there is a signature and it says Elizabeth, and that is the way the Queen signs. And it's interesting that she's signing at the top. She's above everything here. And down at the, you'll notice it's from the Attorney General of Canada for some reason, a proclamation from the Attorney General of Canada. And you'll also notice that every time they use numbers in here, they use in the year of our Lord 1964 spelled out in letters. They're not using numbers, they're actually spelling out in words those numbers. There's only one place where they use the number for some reason instead of spelling it out, and that's the 17th day of December. But we'll talk more about that. Oh, there's another instance of it there. But you've got the Queen signing at the top. You've got the Attorney General as being, it must be coming from the Attorney General or something. And then who signs it at the bottom but the Prime Minister. So it's kind of interesting, I find, that they have the Queen's signature at the top. They've got the Attorney General in there for some reason, and then they've got the Prime Minister. And I would think normally that this would be signed by the Queen's representative, which would be the Governor General. So some interesting questions about this this whole thing, but just interesting to look at the style, the symbols that they use, the formal, you know, fancy stuff that they use all over the place. Everything has meaning. Nothing is done by accident. And we'll look at a few more things that are of interest. Continuing on with the Queen, this is a sample of her oath, which she signed, and again, there's her signature at the top, Elizabeth R. And I believe the R is for the Regina, which is the Queen, one of the Queen's legal names, I suppose. So anyways, just an indication of how they do things and how they represent things, and it's important to look at those symbols and understand what they mean. So with regards to symbols, IDs and papers, driver's license is a symbol which represents certain things. Do you understand what it means? Passport is a symbol. Do you understand what it means? There are symbols within the symbols. On the front of a passport is a coat of arms. Your signatures are symbolic of something. They're symbolic of your consent and agreement. So everything has a symbolism to it, and do we understand those symbolisms? And one of the interesting things which I heard many, many years ago was that the English language is a language of commerce, and it was designed and created for the purposes of commerce. And if you look at the way that that the language is broken down, and we'll be having some more videos on this, if you think in terms of commerce being Admiralty Maritime Law, and how many words have the word ship in them, relationship, partnership, all of these things, there are so many words. Like I said, we'll have an in-depth report on this that clearly show that a large majority of words that we use every day are commercial in nature and relate to commercial information and transactions. And one of those things is your name. There's been lots of research on your name and what it is and how it works and so on. And under common law, you have a Christian or given name. Christian, of course, relating to the Bible, and given being the non-religious interpretation of that. But the idea being that that is your name, and one interpretation is that the only name that you can truly claim as your own is your Christian name or given name, because it was given to you for you and your use alone. And the family name is not yours. You can't claim it as yours because it was loaned to you and you loan it out to your children, etc. So you have the use of it, but it's not really yours. So it's an interesting distinction to think in terms of your name is just your given names and your Christian name, and the family name is just a name that you use. Now they take the family name and they convert it into all their forms. They call them last name or surname. And once they do that, they are moving you into the commercial process with regards to those titles. Once you move out of the given name Christian name and into the last name surname, you are moving into a different world. You've changed the meaning of the symbol, because these are now considered to be commercial type of interpretation labels. And your signature, if we go back for a second to what I showed you there with Elizabeth's signature on the flag and on the proclamation or on the oath, she only signed her first name. Well, why is that? Why did she only sign her first name? Why not Elizabeth Windsor and so on? Well, if this is your only name and you can't claim any other name, you have the use of the family name. Maybe when you sign your signature, you should be signing your name, which is your given name, because it's not yours to write or to claim in the family name. And with a little additional information on that and insight into that, I went looking for some proof of two different things. One of them was of the signature, and one of them was of the commercialization of the numbering system that we use, which I'll go into in a moment. So I did a search for sent it to by the Queen of Canada, because I wanted to see signatures and a few other things, but I'll show you the numbering in a moment. This here is numbering stuff. Let's find it. Okay, royal titles. Canadian Heritage is an interesting site which has all sorts of historical information about the heritage objects, about the symbols that are used. Anthems and symbols, royal titles, all about the monarchy, etc. They have information breaking down what all the symbols in the coat of arms mean. There's lots of interesting stuff there. So well worth looking into if you're interested in learning about what the symbols mean. So getting back to the signatures, here's a royal history site for the British royals. And if we look up here, this is their coat of arms. And like I said, each of the family members also has their own coat of arms. So there's a family coat of arms and then individual coat of arms. So Queen Elizabeth II, you've got all of her history here. So her full name is Elizabeth Alexandra Mary. And that's her full name. Look at what they're calling it. They're calling it a full name. All right, but it doesn't have the last name on there. So that's interesting that the royals don't really recognize the last name. And if you go down to the bottom here and you go Queen Elizabeth II's signature, it's Elizabeth R. It might be Elizabeth reigning, might be the R, etc. But the bottom line is it's the first name only that she signs. And if we look at Prince Charles here, his name, Charles Philip Arthur George, and again, no last name indicated there. And how does he sign? He signs last name only. Okay. And if we go here, this is a House of Windsor family tree. This is all in this site. The link will be somewhere below. And you can see that the family tree has a coat of arms associated with it and the individual members of the coat of arms. Another thing about all the royals is everybody's got military garb. If you actually look at all of the pictures of the military or the royals in all of their official portraits, they're all wearing their military stuff, which could be symbolic of something. So if you mouse over these images, you'll notice that all of these images, they pop up and get larger, and they're all exactly the same images when they pop up. The one here and the one that pops up are the same. But just by accident I scrolled over Diana's, and my goodness, when you scroll over hers, it's a different image. So she's got a smiling face here, but now she's got a kind of like a worried or a little bit disgusted look. And where's she looking? She's looking up here at Prince Charles. And like I said, out of all these pictures, this is the only one that pops up a different image than the one that's indicated in the family tree here. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and I wonder who put that there and what they mean by it, because it must be symbolic of something. So let's continue on here. So your signature is symbolic of your agreement and consent on everything that you do when they want your signature, and they can't do anything unless you give them their signature. That's why they're always asking for it, because that's your consent. So if you don't consent to something, you don't understand something, I don't know, should you really be putting your signature on it? And if you think in terms of the games that are being played with regards to the name game and moving you from common law into commercial, if there is a recognition within common law that the only name that is truly yours is your given names, then maybe your signature should represent your understanding of the common law name that is just yours, which is the given names only. And if possibly you use the last name in your signature, maybe that is something that they will infer, imply, and presume is that you're now claiming something which isn't yours and moves you into the commercial world because that's the name you do commerce with. Or it's improper for you to claim it, and now you've broken some commerce rule. It's just an interesting concept to investigate a little bit further about signatures and the name that you claim. So the other thing is that the Authorized King James Bible is the official law book that is the foundation of the legal system in common law. And it doesn't matter whether you believe in the Bible or any of the stories in the Bible with regards to a religious context. It's important to understand from a practical point of view, from a legal point of view, this is the book that they have built their game on. This is the book which they have established the rules on. And whether or not they follow all the rules, that's really up to question, but this is something to have some understanding with. And there's a number of different versions of the Bible out there, but the one that is really the law that they recognize is the Authorized King James Bible, and there's a particular version of it, 1860 or 40 or something like that. So that particular book, it's important to think in terms of, if you understand the game, you need to understand the rule book they're playing by, and this is the rule book that they are playing by. And if you look at the Authorized Bible and you look at the process of what's happened with the Bible, it's the foundation of common law and civil law. If you go into the Bible, one of the things I heard years ago was that it was a commercial book. It was teaching the principles of commerce to people, for those who studied it from a perspective of how to do business with other people. All the rules and lessons of commerce and civil law are within it, as are the rules of common law. So they're teaching God's law in the Bible. They're teaching common law, and they're teaching Roman civil law. And there's obviously more that's not in the Bible, but the foundational principles, the concepts, the legal maxims, etc., are largely founded in that particular book, the King James Bible. And an interesting idea I heard years and years ago, which it's just made more and more sense as I've studied other things, is that the missionaries' purposes for going around the world and spreading the word was multifold. One was a religious conviction to spread the word and save people's souls, etc. But at the same time, whether or not the missionaries knew it, they were teaching commerce. They were teaching the rules of doing business. They were also teaching the English language to people, which has become the de facto language for commerce. And when you study the language, again, we'll be doing more videos on this, you'll find out that the language is just completely full of commercial terminology, and it is specifically tailored for commerce. So an interesting concept with regards to the Bible and the impact on the systems that we live in, and the messages that are taught are multi-layered, and only those who are aware of the layers are going to understand the messages within those varied layers. But if you study the Bible from a commercial business point of view, you will find the rules of commerce in there. You will also find the rules of common law. It's not just a spiritual text. And it makes sense also from a spiritual perspective that God would be teaching people how to live with each other, how to trade with each other, and so on. So it's not a strange idea. It does make sense. So I just wanted to touch on that. We'll be doing more on the Bible later. And a couple more I want to touch on is Arabic numbers are commercial. This was something that somebody emailed to me about 9 months ago. It was a very interesting piece. I'll be showing it to you in a minute here. The idea that the Arabic numbers were created with a specific purpose and intent, and the design of them communicates a message. And so numbers are symbolic of an idea, and if you create the symbol which clearly communicates the idea to those who know what to look for, then it takes on a whole new meaning for those who know what to look for. During the time of the early Christian days, because Christians were not allowed to meet in public and so on, they had secret meetings, and they used a symbol over the door, which was the fish symbol over the door to indicate a Christian meeting place. And at that time, it didn't mean anything to anybody else who hadn't been told this is what that means. So it was a closely guarded secret among the Christians, so that they could have their meeting places and advertise to people who knew what it meant. And this type of communication has gone on for forever, probably, with regards to communicating with symbols. So Arabic numbers are commercial in nature. They were developed for commerce. The civilization that created them was developing it for the purposes of commerce, and that is why the shapes of the letters are specific in their design. They are not just created for no reason. They have a specific shape, and we'll go with that in a minute. So it makes sense that if you are in commerce, you would use the symbols of commerce, which would be the words that are commercial in nature, and you would use the numbers that are commercial in nature, and you would use the processes that are commercial in nature. So those who were schooled in commerce would make sure that they were using all the symbols and tools of commerce while they were in commerce, and use different symbols and tools when they were not in commerce. So each number shape is a specific design, and there's a PowerPoint which I'll show you in a moment here, but this is an interesting little tidbit from the email, so I'll just read it. Someone at some point in time had to create their shapes and meanings of the numbers. Watch this short presentation, then you'll know how our Arabic numbers were originally created a very long time ago, and what logic the people that created them used to determine their shapes. It is really very simple and quite creative. People created something so simple and perfect that it has lasted for thousands and thousands of years and will probably never change. When the presentation gets to number 7, you'll notice that the 7 has a line through the middle of it. That was the way the Arabic 7 was originally written. And in certain and other areas, they are still write 7 that way. Like in French, they write 7 with the line through it, and French is a civil law nation, commercial or commerce-based civil law. And also in the military, commonly they write it that way. And the military probably is Admiralty, Maritime, all tied in with it, which is commerce, commerce of the seas and so on. And the 9 has a cute curly tail on it that has been reduced for the most part nowadays to a simple curve, but the logic involved still applies. So when we look at these numbers, you'll see that we no longer use them exactly like this. There has been slight modifications, things are rounded out, but you can definitely see why the numbers were created the way they were. There's a very specific reason those designs are as they are. So here's that video presentation on the numbers. So that was interesting, wasn't it? Just a couple more points on this numbers issue. We have here a list of different meanings that numbers have for different types of people. This is from a numerology website where each number is assigned different meanings based on the energy of the number. And there's different words, concepts, ideas associated with each number. Number 2 is different than number 1, etc. In the tarot, there's a number assigned to it. Astrology has a meaning and association with it. The runes, I Ching, Kabbalah, shamanism, alchemy, auras, they all have relationship to numbers, and they all have different interpretations. So if you're talking to somebody in astrology, they're going to have a different interpretation of the number 1 than somebody that you're talking to with alchemy or the Kabbalah, etc. So there's, again, depending on the context, numbers take on different meanings. Depending on the context, words take on different meanings. So the context and the interpretation, the understanding, the mutual understanding of what the context is and the meanings of the things that we're looking at is important for us to successfully navigate our way through any society whatsoever. So one more thing on the numbers here. I went looking for evidence of the use of written words for numbers instead of the numbers themselves. So I just went to CanLI here and did a search for 1900, which is, the beginning of the 1982 or whatever it is, and there's lots of different things that come up. I narrowed the search just down to legislation because I wanted to find places where the Queen had actually done things. Because it's normally with the Queen and sometimes the Governor General where they use the written language for a number instead of the numerical value. And you can see here that it's all in the year of our Lord, 1980, etc., written out. This is a proclamation, and this is an appointment of the Governor General. This is with regards to the Queen's birthday. There's all sorts of Styles and Titles Acts, proclamation. You'll see that there's a lot of these are proclamations. It appears that when the Queen is signing something, they write the words out or the numbers out in this manner. They don't write them out in numerical values. Just to see that here, Publication of Statutes Act, you'll see that there is no indication of the Queen being involved in this particular one because it's a statute which has a different authority than a proclamation or a law. So here's a proclamation announcing the appointment of the Governor General, and so this is the Queen. And if we look at the nature of the introduction, you'll notice that they have these complex introductions, and then they use greeting. So it's very honorable and very official, etc., etc. And here they are using in the year of our Lord, 1995. Written out. Now, I think that this is an indication that this is a common law particular type of issue. When they are moving laws into place that are common law, they write out the numbers into words and they reference the year of our Lord so that it's relative to the Bible. So it's just an interesting potential insight. Here's another proclamation. Exact same format with the greeting and her name and her statuses, etc. And you'll notice that in all of her names here, it's upper and lower case, and then Queen is full uppercase, capitis diminutio maxima. It's kind of interesting that they changed the status indication through that change of capitalization. So there's things to be learned by the way that things are filled out and applied when they're moving into a lawful issue. Here's the Royal Titles Act, and because this has to do with the Queen and its official law for the land, it's got the preamble and it's got various other things with regards to the proclamation that are all filled out with the greeting and so on. So again, different formality, different way of writing out the words, and there's those signature ones again. So there's lots of interesting things with regards to numbers, the use of numbers, and the use of symbols overall. But I've come to the general conclusion that the English language is part of what allows them to continue their presumptions that we're operating commercially, because we're using commercial words when we're dealing with them, and we are using our last name as part of the name that we claim, which they view as a commercial device. and maybe that has something to do with it. And when we sign with our last name, maybe that gives them the presumption or allows them to make the presumption that we're operating in a commercial manner. And if we're using Arabic numbers, those are commercial based, there's another confirmation of the presumption. So there's lots of presumptions that they can make, and part of our job is to understand the symbols and eliminate as many opportunities for presumptions to exist. And if we stay clear of the civil law, commerce presumptions, and more into the common law, then it's harder for them to you know, move along making their presumptions, because a presumption just means we know it's not true, or we have no proof it's true, but we'll pretend it's true and move as if it is true. And the mail is another aspect I've studied over the years and seen a lot of references to it. And there is a difference between private mail and commercial mail, and one of the tools that they use for that apparently is the postal code and zip codes. So with regards to private mail, one of the ways to address your mail is by using a care of address. So it's care of John Doe, proper style capitis there, and then, or not, excuse me, not care of John Doe. Well, it could be care of John Doe, it could be coming care of somebody else, but it's 123 Cherry Street. So you're using the the address of the house, or the apartment and the house is address, because in common law the man and woman does not have an address. The house has an address, the building has an address, the apartment suite has an address, but you don't. So it's only possible in common law for a man to receive a number care of an address and not claim that address as your own, because all the addresses are deemed, considered, presumed to be commercial in nature. And the final nail in the coffin of that appeared to be the creation of the postal and zip codes, because those appear to be relative to artificial zones. Some of them think they're military zones, and by using a zip code, receiving mail at a zip code address without the separation of the care of, or by doing two things, which is putting the zip code into a brackets, so it removes it. The law of boxing removes it. It shows an indication that you don't really want to use it, but you're putting it on there for somebody else's use. Doesn't really form part of your intention. Or putting postal code exempt on it. There's a few other tips out there with regards to it, and I've mailed lots of letters with no postal code on it, and it's gotten there just fine. So again, there's lots of options, but the basic idea that the common law man lives care of an address, and if you're using the address, claiming it as your own, or using the postal code, there's a presumption that you're doing commercial business, and therefore they have some jurisdiction to interfere in it. The free mail service is supposedly general delivery. So if you want to receive mail for free, not be involved in the commercial aspect of things at all, you can get mail at the post office to you, addressed to you, general delivery, care of the main post office, whatever that is near you. And the postal people will tell you have to rent a box. You can't continue to receive mail there. You can only do it for 2 weeks. Well, they can say that all they want. Just keep on going and picking up your mail, because they can't make you get a postal mailbox, because that would be a commercial entity thing as well. So your home delivery is also considered commercial, because the free delivery service is the general delivery, and anything beyond that becomes commercial. There's even some people out there promoting the idea that it only costs 2 or 3 cents to mail a letter to general delivery, and the rest of the cost of postal is to pay for the commercial delivery from the local post office to the commercial house address. So some interesting ideas there for people who want to research that. But the mail is another way of trying to create joinder through the presumption that you are operating in a commercial manner by the system sending you mail to the all caps name at that address, and so they are attempting to communicate to one of their commercial people at a commercial address, and when you respond to it, they play the presumption that it must be that you are accepting liability and responsibility for the commercial name on the document, because you opened it, you responded to it, and it came to a commercial address. It's presumption upon presumption upon presumption. So the more you can minimize those presumptions, the better. So that's just some overview into some of the ideas of symbols. Each one of those can be a long workshop on their own. There's lots of interesting things to research, but again, the idea is to be aware of the symbols that are out there and recognize what the communication is that's going on to you every day in every way without your awareness. But those not being aware of it allows those commercial presumptions to exist for the system, and you might want to reduce those. One last thing is that movies are a great tool for education and a great tool for propaganda, and there's lots of messages inside of movies through the use of symbols. Education used to occur from person to person through oral education, people telling stories around the campfire and around the kitchen table, and you'd learn about morals and values and ethics and difference between right and wrong and all that. Well, a lot of that teaching now goes on in movies, and many movies that appear to be entertainment only have strong education within them. Some of them are propaganda and some of them are freedom messages. So if you watch for the storytelling that's going on, the ethical tales, the moral tales, the warning tales that are in the movies these days, there's a lot of great information and great lessons there. And a lot of people, like I said, see it only as entertainment and consciously miss the messages, although unconsciously they're going in. And when they're unconsciously going in, unfortunately it seems that the propaganda seems to take a better hold than the good stuff. So something to consider there. I'm doing a collection of clips from movies, which we'll be putting out piece by piece over the next year, which have educational elements that expose how things work, and you might want to pay attention to the messages that you're being sold, fed, and trained with every day through television, commercial advertising, and the movies. There's some good stuff out there, but there's lots of bad stuff. Anyways, hope that helps.